Hi, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non Muslims to handle Islam in the 21st century. My name is Mustafa, and this is my co host in the nick of time. If you wish to talk about Islam, the ideology, you have come to the right place. We cover current Islamic news, Islamic scripture, some crazy comments, and a weekly topic about Islam to examine, critique, and analyze. If this is not enough Islam for you, please drop by our Discord to discuss any further questions about Islam. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. However, we do embrace free speech and criticism if it's factual and correct. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, my brothers and brothers. Yes. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Walaikum salam.
Hello, Nick.
Hello, Mr. Moose. Hello, Dr. King.
Dr. King, Dr. King. Faiz King, Arthur King. So now you've made him Dr. King.
Well, technically you are a doctor, right? So,
Correct.
So yeah, Dr. King.
Yeah, that was I think that was the name of
Martin
a
Luther.
character. Martin Luther King. Yes, Martin Luther was Dr. King as well. So.
Yeah, I don't want to be confused with that. I mean, I wouldn't mind, but that's not right.
Yeah. But before we, not even a little slavery. Doorknob? No slavery. No. Okay. This is not a sex channel. This is not a porn channel. This is maybe a comedy channel. And this is
Daddy, please.
No,
please.
let's keep it halal, guys. Let's keep it halal. All right? So before we jump, we have a very interesting topic for today, gods of the Quran. So which is other deities mentioned in the holy book itself, the Quran specifically. And we found quite a lot. Faiz and I, we actually found quite a lot of information. We did some independent research.
Mm-hmm.
So what is going to happen is I'm going to discuss some, I'm going to discuss my side. Faiz is going to discuss his side. And then we'll open the floor for questions. But before we begin, I just wanted to share some brief news items for today. That is, so for the news section, I just wanted to share with you guys that in Pakistan, the Pakistani court sentenced a woman to death for a WhatsApp blasphemy because she ended up insulting Islam's Prophet Muhammad and one of his wives. Now, this sentence was passed in Rawalpindi on Wednesday. So, if anything, it's so bizarre that over a WhatsApp message she got arrested over a WhatsApp message. Now, what I'm thinking is that she might be not necessarily be an ex-Muslim or an atheist, but even a Shia Muslim who actually, because Shia Muslims are openly vocal against Aisha as well. So it's probably a good chance that it's a Shia Muslim, could be an Ahmadi Muslim as well. You never know. And another thing I wanted to share with you guys, and we were just speaking about this. This is what I found on Facebook. But yeah, any thoughts of you guys having about the blasphemy law? You guys, Arthur, Faiz, and Nick.
Well, considering I wouldn't be alive for a long time because of those laws, I'm pretty against them.
Yeah, they're outdated, archaic.
Oh yeah. All right, let's share this I found. All right, so Halalpreneur that I just stumbled upon on Facebook. And this is start a halal biz online. So make 10K halal income online monthly. Akib Ahmed, if you guys know anything about this, seems like a scheme, honestly. Nick, you suggested something. What kind of scheme did you suggest?
Pyramid. I mean, a multi-level network direct sales pyramid scheme.
Sure. Multi-level marketing. Sure. All right. No, I think that's it for today's news. But today we're gonna, what do you call it? Could jump into the topic for today because this is very interesting. We want also your engagement, the audience, your engagement as well on time. So Nick will keep a timer on me as well. Um, so
Yes, I will
we'll make
time
sure I
you.
don't go over 30 minutes. I'll try to keep it short. Faiz always keeps it short. He's a gentleman, and I'm the bastard here. So you know I'm the cheating
Thank you.
bastard, the heel in this situation. So I'll go first, and I'll give Faiz the comeback. So all right. So I just
I'll
want
start it right now,
you
and
guys
I'll
can see
pause
this.
myself. Yeah.
You guys
Yes,
can
you
see
can see
this.
it.
All right.
Yes.
So I'll just start the slideshow. So today we're gonna, oh come on, discuss the gods of the Quran, that is, and you guys can interject anytime you want. So here's a list of gods that I found in the Quran, that is named Baal, Ar-Rahman, Malik, Allah Himself, of course, the Grand Allah, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza.
Wait. Isn't A.R. Rahman the guy that made the J-Ho?
No, this is not the same. This is not the singer. This is not the singer. This is Ar Rahman, not A.R. Rahman. A.R. Rahman is a different guy altogether. Though we could do a specific video on him as well. So
J-Ho.
yeah, Jeho, guys. Um, so we had Al Uzza, Manat, Wad, Suwa, Yagut, Yoch, and Nasr, which we discussed in the last flood story. We have some unnamed female deities, the Quran doesn't specify. Then there's the invocation of Satan or Satan's worship. And then there's the worship of angels and jinns. So the first god I wanted to talk about was Baal, that is. And I think some of you will find this one interesting. So, chapter 37, verse 125 says, would you call on Baal and leave the best of creators? Now, Baal, like I said, it was a Middle Eastern, very common in the Middle East actually. This god was worshipped in Egypt. He was worshipped in the Israel Palestine region. So it was very common in this region, and Baal meant owner or lord in Hebrew. So, like I wrote here, he's a universal god of fertility, lord of the earth, so etc. And he's actually the son of El, Elohim, or El, and his wife Asherah. And he's also the enemy of Yahweh. And though they're technically brothers in a sense that El was their father. So he's part of the pantheon. And Yahweh, initially the Abrahamic god Yahweh, was also part of the same pantheon. And so we have the Ras Shamra tablets. They say the following, that he was locked in a constant battle with Mot, the god of death and sterility, whereas he's the god of life. And if Baal was victorious, there was a 7-year cycle of fertility and crops. This is sounding very weirdly similar to the Joseph story, where he predicted 7 years of fertility, 7 years, there will be death. So it's very similar to that aspect. Um, then he also had a feud with El, like he actually defeats Yam, the ruler of the sea or the god of the sea. So he's crowned king of gods, Yam, by El, and basically Baal rebels against El's decisions because Yam is a harsh ruler, and he fights Yam and he defeats Yam. He also has a battle with Mot. I'm probably butchering that name. Then he's resurrected, returns, there's another battle. Mot is kind of defeated here, where he bows to Baal in fear of El. So El is basically the boss god here, but we have the king of gods, Baal, as well. Now, there's Baal itself was also a title used in the Middle East as well. Like especially one of the examples I found was Baal Haman. He was the supreme god of the Carthaginians. Now, Carthage was the North African empire that was rivals with the Roman Empire. So there's also Baal Karnaim, which is the Lord of the Two Horns, that is. So Baal is also, he's seen as Baal Berith as well, Lord of the Covenant in Judges 8:33, where Israelites worshipped Baal Berith. Baal is also a title as well. Baal is also seen as a demon per se. So Beelzebub, you guys have heard probably the name of Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies. You know, basically this is a demon, that is, in Christianity. There was even interesting history points I found where worshippers of Yahweh would make mockery of the term Baal Zebul, which meant Lord Prince, but turned him into Lord of the Flies. And so when monotheism was on the rise, then there was some form of what do you call it? There was a bad attitude towards the worship of Baal. That is. Now, I even looked at the tafsirs of the same verse, and Jalalain stated that Baal's idol was made of gold. Tanwir al-Makbas, on the other hand, like he says, it talks of bull worship. Like, I didn't put the entire tafsir because it would have taken forever, but it talks of I put out specific points that are unique and distinct because some of them had similarities. Then it describes Baal as 30 cubits tall with 4 faces. Now, then Ibn Qasir, he references Baal means Lord. He's kind of on point. But he also states that it's the language of the people of Yemen. And some say it was an idol worshipped in the city of Baalbek, which was west of Damascus. So now we're starting to touch on the regions of where this god was worshipped. So this is just the first god. Now, this one's an interesting one that I found. Ar-Rahman, not A.R. Rahman, Nick, not A.R. Rahman, Ar-Rahman. And Quran chapter 25, verse 60 states, when you say to them, bow before Ar-Rahman, they say, what is Ar-Rahman? Should we adore whoever you ask us? And their aversion increases further. Now, it's talking to people who are, what is Ar-Rahman? Now, they're getting confused as who is Ar-Rahman? Now, this would confuse the polytheists because Ar-Rahman is a title of a king. It means most merciful. But this was also the title of the god Marduk as well, who was the chief god of the Babylonians. The term comes from Rahmanan, and Rahmanan was a very common term used in South Arabia, and it was a term used for a king. And it was a term used Rahmanan even had a temple there, reportedly, according to the Book of Idols. And then this term came into usage by Jews and Christians of the South Arabian region, which is closer to Yemen. So there's a lot of Yemenite influence you're going to see with these gods, that is. Now, Malik is an interesting one. Chapter 43, verse 77, it states, they will cry, "O Malik, would that thy Lord put an end to us?" He will say, "Nay, but ye shall abide." So this verse is talking about people who are already in hell, and they will cry out to this Malik character. Malik, they'll say, "Oh, please would your Lord, would your Allah have put an end to this?" He's like, "No, you shall stay there." So Ahmad Ali's translation refers to Malik in brackets as the keeper of hell. However, Malik appears to be also a name for a king, but also appears in a lot of North Arabian inscriptions as a possible god, that is. Tafsir al-Tanwir al-Makbas says Malik is the master of the fire, whereas Tafsir al-Jalalain also refers to him as the keeper of the fire. So I doubt a lot of people knew that Malik was the specific angel or character that was the keeper of hell, or deity, so to speak. And then we have Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. You guys are probably familiar with the Satanic verses story. So chapter 53 states, verses, have you considered Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, the third, the other? Are there sons for you and daughters for him? So these are the daughters of Allah. again, according to the Islamic narrative, these were the daughters of Allah during the pre-Islamic times. However, these goddesses are actually part of a Nabatean pantheon. So the Nabateans resided in the north, in the Jordan area where Petra is. So these are Nabatean goddesses. And what's interesting is that Muhammad had a famous story with the satanic verses where he accidentally stated that these three goddesses are so you can ask for their intercession. So, and
Wait,
then
satanic verses, is it the same satanic verses as Salman Rushdie?
Rushdie does make a reference to it, actually, to the same story, where he does state the story. Like, it's not the same thing, but this was the satanic verses itself is a separate story where Muhammad, he gets desperate to get followers, so he invokes Allah, Uzza, and Manat, and he says they are the high flying cranes in this chapter 53. However, it turns out that the devil was speaking in his ear. So Satan was speaking in his ears. So then Gabriel's like, change this. So they had a verse, chapter 22, verse 52, which was a sort of like, you were the first ever prophet that we who was, you had a desire, like, who moved away from his movement. So it was kind of like a weird cover up. That is, it was a very strange cover up. So Anat was associated with fertility and war. She's kind of like equivalent to Athena in the Greek pantheon. So she's worshipped in the Hejaz region. So Hejaz is like the west of what we have modern day Saudi Arabia, like where Medina and Mecca are located. But she's also she was worshipped by the Banu Thaqif tribe. So Taif was up north. However, there is evidence of her worship in South Arabia as well, in Qadar. So she's also one of the daughters of Allah. Then we have Al Uzza, that is another Nabatean goddess, who's the sister. Her equivalent is Aphrodite, and she's the goddess of might, protection, and love. And her temple is located in Petra, Jordan, which I found interesting. And she was known as the chief goddess of the Quraysh. And she even had a stone cube as a temple in Nakhla. Reportedly, that is, she had, according to his Muslim historians, she had a stone cube as a temple. So having a stone cube as a temple was nothing new with the Arabian pagans. Now, we finally have Manat, the goddess of fate, destiny, and death. She's described by Tabari as one of the greatest deities in Mecca. She's a Nabatean goddess, but she's also known as Manawat in Latin. And she's the equivalent to Nemesis in the Greek pantheon. So there are some similarities to the Greek pantheon, you find. So she was the chief goddess of Aus and Khazraj. Aus and Khazraj were the two most powerful tribes of Medina, and they were the ones who brought in Muhammad to solve their dispute in Medina. So again, there was her last shrine was in Al-Qudayd, which was destroyed. So there's some also ties with Medina. So there is, a reference to like the geography of the location, that is. Now we have, remember we touched on Wad, Suwa, Yagut, Yok, and Nasr. The Quran's author claimed that these were the gods of Noah's time. And it said, never leave your gods, never leave Wad, Suba, Yagut, and Yok, and Nasr. Now, in the flood story, we discussed that these were the gods that the author of the Quran thought existed during Noah's time. And I found this in the study Quran by Sayyid Hussein Nasr, that Wad was in the form of a man, Suba was a beautiful woman, Yagut was a bull or sometimes a lion, Yok was a horse, and Nasr was an eagle or a bird of prey. Like these were the symbols that were used. Now, I'll look at each of these gods. So Wad, what I found, was the national god of the Manaeans. The Manaeans, I'm probably butchering that name,
They were located in Main in modern-day Yemen. So again, another Yemenite reference. So south. This time we're looking at the south of Arabia. So this kingdom existed between 1000 BCE to 150 BCE, and their trade routes did connect Yathrib and Gaza. So during Muhammad's time, this would have been relatively known as a distant as history, that is. And their inscriptions were even found in Qanawa. And sometimes the god was associated with a snake, and he is said to have represented heaven. Sorry. This is Suwa, that is the goddess. She's also, weirdly enough, part of the Nabatean pantheon, which is up north. And she was worshipped by the Hudayl tribe. Now, this tribe, Hudayl, was famous for intellects and poets, and they were located in the western region of Hijaz. So, this was called the Lihanite kingdom that I found the origins of the kingdom. And it was formed in the 7th century BCE, but they were annexed by the Nabateans in 24. However, they gained their independence in 106 when the Romans captured Nabatea. So they were located in the Hijaz region. However, Banu Lahyan, they were then known as Banu Lahyan. They were invaded by Muhammad and taken over at 627. So the Banu Lahyan would have been worshipping Suwa as well. So this was why Muhammad or the author of the Quran would have known of this goddess. Yaguth was a god worshipped by the Madhij, and this was a Qahtanite confederation. So the Qahtanites were Southern Arabians, that is, and there was the Madhij tribe of the Qahtanites. Include very famous members, Ammar bin Yasir, Maliki Ashtar, and these are famous companions of Muhammad and Ali. The people of Jarash in Yemen also worshipped this god. So this god was worshipped in the southern region. Then we have Yok as well. This god symbolizes a horse. He's found in South Arabian inscriptions. Now, this one I found that he was part of the Himyarite pantheon, like the kingdom of Himyar and Katabians. So these are pre-Islamic kingdoms that I'm talking about. That this kingdom, the Himyar kingdom, was established in 110 BCE and ended in 570. So, and this kingdom was located in Yemen and even went up till Yathrib as well. Judaism, Christianity. Judaism was practiced in this region, but so was Christianity. And Abraha was one of their last kings. So if you remember the incident of the elephant with the birds, Surah Al-Fil, Abraha was, supposed to be the king at that time. So, basically, the Himyarite kingdom is, where this god comes from, Yok. So, and Nasser was also worshipped by the Himyarites as well, so from southern Arabia, southern region in Yemen. He was worshipped in a place called Balkha, according to the Book of Idols. And the Rabia tribe, or Banu Rabia, these were a northern Arabian or Adnanite tribe, that is. And they lived in the kingdom of Kinda. Now, Kinda itself is also a pre-Islamic kingdom. And Kinda existed in Central Arabia between 450 to 550 CE. This is just 20 years before Muhammad was born. And allegedly, if Muhammad existed, that is. And this kingdom was the first attempt to unite the Arabs. And Imrul Qais was one of the famous pre-Islamic poets from there. So Nasr, this god, existed in Central Arabia, specifically in the kingdom of Kinda. So what it goes to show that the references the author of the Quran is making are very local and not very far distant from memory necessarily. And then finally, I'm going to wrap this up with Satan and female deities as well as worship of angels. So chapter 4, verse 117.
states the following: they call upon female deities and they invoke none but Satan, the rebellious one. Now, the verse doesn't specify who these goddesses are. It also talks of Satan's worship as well. Now, most tafsirs say that, Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were, the female deities, that is. And apparently, worshipping a female was seen as something bad by the author of the Quran, or the new religion, that is. So they kind of weirdly admitting that their god is a male. And then we have each idol had its own Satan, apparently, which I found in the study Quran, which I wanted to look into further if I find information. But yeah, this was one weird that this idol had its own Satan as an opposite, or was Satan inspiring them? So it was kind of like weirdly phrased like that. Then we move into, finally, we go into, worship of, actually, yeah. So worship of angels and jinn.
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt you here. You got 10 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to wrap this up. So we have the worship of angels and jinn, and they make with Allah partners in chapter 6, verse 100. The jinn, though, he has created them, and they falsely attribute to him sons and daughters without knowledge. Glorified is he exalted. So what they're saying is that the jinns are being associated with Allah as partners. But this is an attempt to say these are just nothing more than jinn. Chapter 34, verse 41. Angels were asked on Judgment Day why, if they were worshipped. The angels will be a backstabbing sons of guns, and they'll say, "Glory be to you. You are our protector, not them. Indeed, no." They worshipped the jinn. It was in them that most of them believed. So these angels turn out to be backstabbers, basically. So it's a weird, way of convincing people out of their existing religions, by the author of the Quran. Now, I found a very funny tafsir by Asbab al-Nuzul by Wahdi on chapter 6, verse 100. This verse was revealed about atheists who claimed that Allah and Satan were brothers, that Allah was the creator of human beings, beasts, and cattle, whereas Satan was the creator of vipers, predatory animals, and scorpions. Hence, Allah is saying they ascribe partners unto him, the jinn. First of all, we never claimed Allah and Satan are brothers. I don't know where this Asbab Wahidi comes up with this idea from. It's bizarre how, it's we don't believe in either of them, Allah or Satan. So yeah, I think
you just got to remember they're also the people that say that we say incest is okay, but when we're not the people that are marrying our uncles and cousins.
Exactly, it's bizarre. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Yeah. So, do you guys have any questions, any concerns?
Reanimator had a really good question for you. If you want to read it off the screen.
All right. Now that we are rolling out pig organ transplants, will it be haram for halal or for Muslims to receive one? This is a very good question. A very good question. Now, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. The pig embryo has been eating some news. But yeah, more pig organs for the rest of us, I guess. So yeah, this is going to be a very tough one for the Islamic world to accept.
Yeah, I personally think it's okay because you're not ingesting it, and the admonition was mostly for consumption.
Yeah, but this will still,
psychologically speaking, yeah, a lot of people will oppose it.
Exactly, especially in the, I think there is still resistance, I think, in the Islamic world to different forms of treatments as well, even family planning as well. So don't be surprised if you see some resistance to this kind of procedure, that is. But yeah, I think scholars will give their rulings, that is. There's an Islamic Council which will give their rulings. But yeah, any other questions about the gods?
Yeah, as they say, if there is any scientific evidence for something that we are talking about, we will just throw that scientific evidence in the dustbin. We don't need that.
Yeah, exactly. We only need the word of Allah, basically.
Yeah,
But
no. P.S. That was an actual quote by an actual imam when asked why is there so many contradicting things with science and Islam.
wow,
He's like, if science goes against Islam, then we throw science in the dustbin.
yeah, no, it's definitely um, it's definitely weird. It's we couldn't set wood on fire. Yeah, yeah, dude. All I know, Baal couldn't set wood on fire. Wait, really?
Wet wood on fire.
Baal, the god, right? The god.
Yeah, Paul
Um,
preach.
and it's funny, yeah. And another question, yeah, why? So yeah, Muslims have never heard of tafsir, and it was never used. Yeah, it's funny that Jalalain is actually a relatively good tafsir, and it was. And yeah, they should have included Thor in the Quran. They should have included just to spice things up, just to spice things up. But yeah, these are the only gods that they mention because they would have never known about Thor because Thor is way further up north, whereas they kind of stick to their locality, which is South Yemen, North Nabatea, Petra near Damascus, Egypt, etc. So these are the purpose was also to show that these are very local gods. So they're not very international. What do you call it? Oh dear Lord, science is Islamophobic.
Oh, do you know what they need? They need a pit bull to take stuff Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah, they definitely do. Anyway, I think
Yeah.
that wraps up
I
the
think. Yeah,
gods
just in case
presentation.
if Offer Fives King has any questions for you, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Cafes, do you have any questions about my gods?
Your gods?
Yeah, my gods.
Nah, I'm fine.
Oh, you're fine. Okay. Do not question my gods.
All right. So
Yeah,
then in
I
this
think we're
case, I'll
wrapping
set the
up.
yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
just
So
put a
in this case,
sharing.
I'll set the timer again to 30 minutes. Offer Fives King, you got the floor now.
Perfect. I'll just mute my mic. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna share screen, entire screen, share, and can you guys see it?
Yeah, I can see it. And also thinking clearly, is the timer using Western or Islamic calendar? This is a watch we're using. We're
Uh-huh.
using a watch. So I think
Well, yeah, it's on my cell phone, so I don't know.
yeah. So it's debatable if it's Islamic or Western. We'll say Western, but could be Islamic because the numbers are Islamic.
Mm-hmm. All right. So obviously the gods of the Quran, the jinn of the Quran. That's how I would like to recategorize this. Ilah as superhuman entities. The Quran does not explicitly deny the existence of these deities or ilah. The scripture simply states that those beings have limited authority and lack the ability to intercede on behalf of the supplicant. So while adherents of religions such as Yazidism, they have like a central focus on angels. They have the concept of the heptad or the seven master angels. In general, that's a bit of an exception. Most of mankind have historically worshipped the jinn, at least according to the Quranic narrative. So all those different miscellaneous gods, whether they're fabricated, whether they're an amalgamation of personalities, whether they're nomads, archaic hominids, ultimately they can be categorized as the jinn. So following verses of the Quran strictly forbade the practice of jinn worship. So this is 34, 40 to 42. One day he will gather them all together and say to the angels, "Was it you that these men used to worship?" They will say, "Glory to thee, our tie is with thee as protector, not with them." Nay, but they worship the jinns. Most of them believed in them. So on that day, no power shall they have over each other for profit or harm. So these superhuman entities, what they are is they have a scale and a scope that's beyond humans, but their authority is actually somewhat relativistic. They cannot, uh, in theory and in practice, they cannot speak on your behalf. The fourth race. The Quran acknowledges the existence of four races. These are the angels, the jinn, man, and shayateen. The jinn, historically speaking, they've been conflated with the shayateen. Jinn are actually more physical, while the shayateen are more immaterial and ethereal. There's mention of the four races in the commentary of the study Quran. The study Quran, for example, uses the term alamin. I think to some degree you could use the word multiverse. This is all obviously somewhat debatable, but scholars have used it to mean the multiverse as well. So, what it is, alamin, or the worlds in general, it denotes various levels of cosmic existence. According to Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, who considers the worlds to include infinite space beyond this world, and that God can actualize all possibilities, even the worlds and universes of which we have no knowledge. The definition, in essence, contains the supraphysical space, the imaginal worlds, as well as the domain of the four races. And William Chittick used to write quite a lot of literature on the notion of the imaginal worlds. So, what are the jinn? By default, the jinn they can't be man. Well, they can, but that's not as a categorical construct. That's not the definition that we look at face value. So they're neither man nor are they angel, nor are they hybrid or the Nephilim, which is generally the product of one of these two interspecies beings. So jinn in the West, it's generally regarded as being derived from the word genius. So superhuman intellect, potentially. Magic, potentially. Superhuman strength and the ability to traverse large distances is what we know from the Quranic description of the jinn. They're not described in detail, like, what color skin they have, a lot of these physical features, morphology. As far as the Quran is concerned, they're not described that way. What we can deduce from the Quran is that they predate man. Before the advent of man, the jinn, these superhuman beings, were actually roaming the earth. And eventually, most of them became extinct, except there's isolated pockets of them running around. According to Ibn Kathir and Tabari, these are flesh and blood entities.
Wait, so I'm gonna interject here. So you're saying that the jinn are flesh and blood entities? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, they're actual physical beings.
Okay.
And this verse kind of goes into that as well. So this is taken from the book Biogenesis, the creation of humankind by an angelic species. The creation of jinn was also reported by the Sunni narrator Ibn Abbas. 2,000 years before mankind was created, there were jinn on the earth, and they caused corruption on it and shed blood. Then God sent against them an army of Malaika who beat them and cast them away to islands in the seas. So when God said, "I am placing mankind generations after generations on earth," they, the Malaika, said, "Will you place therein one who will cause corruption and shed blood?" That is, just as those jinn did. Then God said, "I know that which you do not know." And Yeah, so this is just an allusion that appears in Surah Baqarah to the hominids that existed on Earth before Adam as being capable of corruption and shedding blood. So, what are the jinn? They're basically lesser deities. They're regarded as false deities. Why are they regarded as false deities? Because they do not have absolute authority to satisfy the needs of the supplicant. So, the Quran states they worship the jinn. Most of them believed in them. And this is something we can see from looking at civilizations bygone as well as civilizations that currently exist. The worship of these superhuman entities or gods, you could almost use the term jinn interchangeably. So the forgotten deities, again, this is another excerpt from Biogenesis. Jinn are said to have come to the earth ages before man existed. They were the first of Earth's masters. They built huge cities whose ruins still stand in forgotten places. Aeons later, many jinn were forced to flee the earth while others were imprisoned. Still, others roam desolate places to this day. The jinn are said to be invisible to normal men. Invisible, you could look at as a barzakh, as a barrier. They could be in the mountain ranges. They could be in certain islands that we haven't visited. They could be in caves because caves is usually in the Hadith literature. There's a connection with jinns and caves. Iram, it's very important to Arab magic. Iram el Imad, or Iram of the Pillars, is the city's name in Arabic. It is particularly believed by the Arabs that Iram was built by the jinn under the direction of Shaddad, lord of the tribe of Ad. The tribe of Ad, according to legends, was a race roughly equivalent to the Hebrew Nephilim, or the giants. In some version of this myth, Shaddad and jinn built Iram before the time of Adam. The Muqarribun, or the Arab magicians, have important beliefs about Iram and its significance. The Muqarribun, whose traditions predate Islam, believe that Iram is a locale on another level of reality rather than a physical city like Tokyo or New York. The pillars in the Iram of the Pillars has a hidden meaning. Among Arab mystics, pillar is a code name for elder or the old one. Thus, Iram of the Pillars is really Iram of the old ones or the ancients, or those forgotten deities of bygone. And this is an interesting a section which obviously we don't have too much details with. There's some backstory in the Quran. There's some backstory in the Sumerian scriptures or the Sumerian text as well. So the Sumerians, they built the ziggurats, as well as other megalithic superstructures, with the purpose of supporting the connection from the heavens and the earth. According to Zecharia Sitchin, author of The 12th Planet, he vividly described the Anunnaki's penchant for space exploration. These entities, they prepared craft-like devices called the Shem. So if you kind of connect the dots, there you could almost suspect that at least one of the earth-dwelling jinn species, the Anunnaki, they didn't have purely terrestrial origins. They're basically aliens. So the Barzakh prevented the jinn from attempting to communicate or re-engage with the angels, which angels are not terrestrial at all. Like as far as origin is concerned, I mean, they live with us, they intercede, they intervene to some extent, but with God's leave. And we have sought to reach the heaven, but found it filled with powerful guards and burning flames. And we used to sit therein in positions for hearing, but whoever listens now will find a burning flame lying in wait for him. So this is the Quran is basically recounting how the jinns used to have a station in the heavens, but they've kind of been exiled from that. And the Sumerians keep mentioning how these superhuman entities want to reestablish contact with the heavens. So the conquest of space. Dr. Maurice Bucaille, he provides his input on the conditional nature of the conquest of space, which could be found in the Quranic verse 55:33. O assembly of jinns and men, if you can penetrate regions of the heavens and the earth, then penetrate them. You will not penetrate them save with a power. The word if expresses in English a condition that is dependent upon a possibility and either an achievable or an unachievable hypothesis. Arabic is a language which is able to introduce a nuance into the condition which is much more explicit. There is one word to express the possibility, which is ida, another for the achievable hypothesis, which is in, and a third for the unachievable hypothesis expressed by the word law. The verse in question has it as an achievable hypothesis expressed by the word in. The Quran therefore suggests the material possibility of a concrete realization. The subtle linguistic distinction formally rules out the purely mystical interpretation that some people have basically attached to the verse. Quranic verse 55:33 is relevant in that the careful choice of words renders space travel as a distinct possibility, but also assigns authority to God. In other words, God has a final say on which entities are permitted to penetrate the heavens or not. The jinn appear to be at least, excluded from this equation. Moreover, Dr. Bucaille states that the verse employs the word nafada, or to penetrate, and follows it with the preposition min, suggesting a deep physical penetration, not metaphorical, or to pass right through and come out through the other side. So this is an actual achievable possibility. So what do we have here? On the top, you have space travel that's forbidden. Jinns going to space on their squid spacecraft, that's not permitted. And then on the bottom, you have man's conquest of space. The human inclination to deify. Man always worships something. Always he sees the infinite shadowed forth in something finite, and indeed can and must so see it in any finite thing, once tempt him well to fix his eyes thereon. This was a quotation by Thomas Carlyle. According to the Clement of Alexandria, he noticed Buddha's veneration, and this was also recorded in the Stromata. Among the Indians are those philosophers also who follow the precepts of Buddha, whom they honor as a god on account of his extraordinary sanctity. And these are basically humans that have lost their supposed god status through the advent or the introduction of the Quran. You have Hermes, and Hermes is attached to a lot of Egyptian mysticism, the Kybalion to some extent, the Corpus Hermeticum, the Emeralds of Thoth. So he's basically Prophet Enoch in the Quran. Jesus, Son of God, is now his proper title in the Quran is Jesus, Son of Mary. Zulkarnain, Alexander the Great, he's also deified in certain cults as well at some point or another. Now, Zulkarnain, his general description, it fits in smoothly with Alexander the Great, Cyrus the Great, where there's a little bit of a biblical connection, as well as Darius the Great. That's why I put that question mark there. And Dul Kifl, some scholars claim that he is the Buddha. Kifl being kapil, or basically a contracted term of the word Kapilavastu. So this is a claim made by Abu Kalam Azad, Mika Ben David, and some other scholars as well. And also, there are certain figures that appear in the Quran that have a somewhat more avatar type status. Now, they're not gods as in they could actually change the entire course of human events. If you want certain gifts and stuff, they can't really do that. But Elijah, he's also sometimes referenced as the Lord of the Sands or the Lord of the Desert. Kizar as the Lord of the Seas. Elijah and Kizar, according to some narrations, are friends, and they partake in the Hajj annually, I believe. Horus, his final form is Dajjal al-Masih, or the Antichrist. He may have been described as the Sumerian or As-Samiri in the Quran, the guy that kind of created this cow, this golden calf, and it was worshipped, which caused a lot of chaos. And lastly, there are certain figures that are regarded as immortals, obviously in a relative sense, because the whole concept of anika or impermanence that you see in Buddhism and also in the Quran, that everything shall perish except for the face of God, that still holds true. But there are certain figures that have been given centuries, even thousands of years lifespan. Elijah is believed to be one of them. Kizar, which literally means green, he's actually sometimes even referred to as a Messiah of the Sufis. Jesus, who is also sometimes referred to as the Messiah of the Sufis, he's been raised to heaven to return at a particular point in human history, supposedly. Enoch, who actually walked with God, who may actually be connected to the figure of Kizar as well, either transformed into angelic form. Don't want to really go into that beyond the scope of this. And Imam Mahdi, who in the Shia worldview is actually an immortal, and he basically has the same placeholder role as John the Baptist or Elijah. So Imam Mahdi will assist Jesus Christ. I mean, in the beginning, depending on which narrative you look at, he'll take more of a leading role or slightly more subservient role, as there are some discrepancies between how the Mahdi is described in Sunnism as well as Shiism. That's it.
All right, so yeah, Moose, if you want to ask any questions, I think this would be the best. I don't quite have too many questions about it, other than I just want to get your understanding of. I know that there were some references copied, like not copied, but inspiring in a sense.
Uh-huh.
So the Parthenon of the jinns and such, there is a lot of references. Like, let's say if you compare it to the Greeks with the Parthenon of gods there, which
Mm-hmm.
is quite similar to the Indians or the Romans
Mm-hmm.
and such. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think that it was almost translated that just to help to make it easier to convert the people from that areas?
I don't know if this is actually an intentional way of looking at things, but obviously there was the civilizational exchanges and things like demons and angels, like the devas and whatnot. In Hinduism and Zoroastrianism, they use different terms. So the term for demon in Hinduism is actually the term for angel in Zoroastrianism, and vice versa. So I wouldn't be surprised if these so-called um, jinns and angels and deities are kind of describing the same kind of superhuman entity. Now, obviously, some of it's made up. Actually, a lot of it's probably made up, and a lot of these deities are probably amalgamation of personalities. They could have been like a whole bunch of personalities that were fused into one persona. That's also possible.
So, Faiz, I have a question. So you made the claim that jinn are places that are unexplored. So that's what you mean by invisible. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding, that they're invisible as in concealed, and they're in like areas like maybe in the mountainsides or under the water or in certain islands and pockets. I think the Book of Enoch also makes a reference to that as well, that they've been displaced to those areas.
So how come have we not found them? how come have we the more we explored, the more emptier or the more what do you call it? We've almost mapped almost the
Mhm.
entire world. So how come we haven't found these creatures?
We haven't found them. I mean, we do have like those megalithic structures that exist, the ziggurat. We have remnants of these early
No, no, we're
civilizations.
not talking about the structures. We're talking about the actual
Yeah.
creatures themselves.
On that note, Moose, I can actually step in there and actually say that
Hmm.
as much as we would like to have it mapped, we don't quite have it mapped 100% because 95% of the ocean isn't
Yeah,
mapped and such, right? And there's
absolutely.
also
Yeah.
and there's also life in that ocean. Almost 95%
Yeah.
of the life there as well, we don't
Mhm.
know about as well. So in a sense that if you like, I know it is a stretch, but if one was to say, let's take it allegorically and say that we're still trying to find various kinds of life that at one point could be seen as demonic in a sense,
Right.
it's still probably not discovered yet, especially in that sense. And that too, the Fermi's paradox and such.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know about it, the Fermi's paradox, but in physics, they say that the reason, some of the reasons that we don't see aliens is because they probably know that if they broadcast their signal and we find them, it can be deadly and all that. So there, it even this is too much to for me in a sense because there is still no proof. But if you were to take it allegorically, there is some other explanations in a scientific sense that you can bring to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and keep in mind that the claim of the Islamic claim is that these jinns think almost like humans and also
Hmm.
convert to Islam, and they practice Islam.
Hmm.
So we haven't found any evidence of creatures practicing our religion anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
I think when the Quran actually mentions Islam, it's speaking in a more basic sense, submitting to God, uh,
so why haven't we found creatures worshiping God then?
like like Bigfoot or aliens or mermaids.
Yeah, why haven't we found creatures like we're not? I'm talking about jinns specifically. Why haven't we found jinns? You claim
Mhm.
that they're invisible, based on not invisible in a literal sense. You claim that they're invisible because they're hidden away in mountains or unexplored
Right,
areas.
right.
How have we not found any Islamic practices or any evidence of that?
I mean, there are not supposedly Islamic practices, but
Or even worshiping.
yeah, you do find that in the paintings of the Cro-Magnon man, the Neanderthals. They had very sophisticated burial systems.
But those are human species.
No,
I'm talking
they're,
about creatures. I'm talking about
I believe they might actually be jinn because they predate.
how are Neanderthals gen then? They're extinct.
Because according to the Islamic definition, basically like those archaic hominids, they either
Hang on, hang
predate
on.
or coexist with mankind.
No, they coexist with mankind. Hang on,
Hmm.
hang on. Neanderthals don't exist anymore.
Right. That's because of
So how are
genetic
you
retrogression or
and
introgression.
how are you equating a human species with a gen species? Like they're completely different.
No,
Supposed
they were actually supposed to be somewhat similar. They're
Yeah,
uh,
on that point, like biologically speaking, I don't know how familiar. So you are Moose with the biology of it. These other species, like the Java, the Denisovans and such,
but
were
keep in mind,
quite.
listen,
Yeah,
the Islamic definition, jinns are made of fire, where
no,
Neanderthals
that's
made
a
of fire.
primordial element. Like you're not made out of earth, and neither am I. It was only Adam.
But then in the oh my goodness. Okay. So what you're saying is Neanderthals were made of fire. That's what you're saying.
Not just Neanderthal. There's like a host of archaic hominids.
So
That
you're saying they were made of fire, according
no,
to Islam.
the first or the progenitor of the species was,
Who was
and that might have been Iblis because according to some narrations, he's the first of the jinn.
wait, hang on. So Iblis is the ancestor of Neanderthals?
No, no, you're kind of oversimplifying it. Neanderthals are actually very similar to us. There are other species like Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo heidelbergensis, the Flores
So
men that are
so those
quite
other
different.
humans so those other humans are jinns you are claiming.
That's the only place they could go, definition wise. I mean, if they're not
In what
angels, they're not
in what
man.
sense? In what sense? Islamic sense? Because they're supposed to be made of fire.
No,
So
that's
they're supposed to
the
be made.
primordial or the celestial element. So they were initially made out of fire. So it's more metaphorical, as well as scorching wind. But it doesn't mean that they're currently made out of fire. The same way you're not currently made out of earth, unless are you?
Hang on. So you're basically saying you're just making assumptions here. You're
I mean,
basically making
Adam was
assumptions.
made out of earth, right?
I don't believe that. I don't believe Adam is made out of earth.
Yeah. Well,
I would believe that. So that's something I would even question as well.
right. But the thing is, scientifically speaking, I'm not made out of earth, right?
So
It might, and Moose, just to interject here as well. In that era, even with the Greeks and such, the four common elements that the scientists of then would know is earth, fire, air, and water, right? So they might just be thinking of it. If so, I'm not even saying that this might be right, but in terms of me just thinking of what they were thinking, they were
But-
thinking that he was made of a different element, primordial element, than what humans are made of.
now keep in mind, this is an author. The author is supposed to be Allah, and he's saying these things. So why is Allah talking in primitive language then? Like, why doesn't
The thing is, if you spell everything out, it's more likely to confuse people more than if you kept things somewhat simple. Like the stuff I'm saying to you, right? If I actually break it down over numerous talks, it will start to make more sense. But since I'm giving you all this information within like 5 minutes, it's not making sense. The same thing with the Quran. If you bombard it with details and elements of every
So
culture,
the Quran cannot handle a little bit of criticism. Is that what you're saying?
no, the Quran could handle it, but most people will not. Because even esotericism, right, is not something most people can understand. A lot of people look at the Quran just at face value, and that's just how their aptitude is. You tell them about things like fana, or the extinction of the soul, annihilation of the self, they're not going to understand that stuff. They'll be like, what are you talking about, you know?
So what you're saying is the author of the Quran didn't understand these things, or
Yeah,
the
you got to
Quran
think
doesn't
about it in a sense where, yeah, like you got to think about it in a sense that, first of all, Muhammad himself, he even claims that he is illiterate. A lot of people who are Muslim do claim that he was someone who was illiterate, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that I agree, but in a sense that it might be more looking at it in allegorical sense than quite literally.
But then keep in mind, whenever you say allegorical, Quran in multiple places say we are a clear book. Chapter 16, verse 103 says, we are a clear book. Chapter 2, verse 2, clear book. Chapter 3, verse 3, clear book. Chapter 41, chapter 41 says clear book. Constantly, and only in one instance it says chapter 3 verse 7 that it's allegorical, but it's only Allah knows. It's like, so multiple times it's claiming we're a clear book, but then it makes, it kind of gives believers this ability to make
I mean, if you look at it just at face value, the stuff that the Quran is preaching about, like oneness of God, oneness of people, mindfulness, zikar, remembrance, praying 5 times a day, which is kind of like yoga. All of these concepts are
hang on, how is
very simple. It's not asking much. It's just saying don't eat like pork or fornicate, or it's still pretty straightforward. Now it does have the capacity to have ideas that are very profound. So it does appeal to different people at different levels and different understanding. But as a whole, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Also, Moose and Faiz. So I did put the StreamYard link in here
so
for audience questions. Why so is on. Why so as well. I know. Thinking Clearly and Smile wanted to say a few words as well. So if they want to join on, they would have first priority to ask any questions because of the discussions that we had before. But why so? Let's start. And usually for these Q&As, I just want to add, let's keep the questions related to the topic itself, and then any extra discussions we want to have outside the topic, we can do after the 2-hour mark on Discord.
Perfect. And Yeah, keep it specific to gods of the Quran, what Faiz and I presented, all right? And we might, okay, so Vaisal, please start.
Do y'all accept that the Arabs made humans into gods?
Not just the Arabs, just people in general.
Well, I'm saying like this is about like Islamic era,
Mhm.
the pre-Islamic times. So you agree that like Al-Manut and the three intercessors, that they were humans first?
Can you just rephrase that?
So the Arabian people,
Mhm.
they made humans into, like, in the Quran, not all of them are actually gods. That even on Moose's thing, they weren't really gods. They were intercessors.
Correct. They were at least regarded as intercessor, kind of like how Mary in Catholicism is regarded as an intercessor. So yeah, what the Quran is trying to do is revert all these humans, as well as it's focusing more on humans, kind of reverting them back into their primordial form. So Jesus no longer has that godlike status. Neither does Enoch. Um, Enoch being Hermes. So yeah, basically there is that inclination to worship extraordinary personalities throughout history. So like someone like Alexander the Great, he was worshipped by certain cults. So the Quran emphasizes that only God has the ultimate say in terms of authority and whatnot.
So you agree that they were turning humans into okay.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have another question for any of us, Vaisal?
I guess what I would say is like if they were turning humans into this deity status,
Mm-hmm.
why were you talking about the jinn being worshipped? Because I would need a Quran verse where they're talking about jinn being worshipped.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it has been a couple of years since I've read the Quran a couple of times, but where is this in Allah's words that people were worshiping jinns?
Well, it's said that most of mankind, like most of them, they've worshipped the jinn. So all of those deities that you see in other religions, like if Baal were to exist, and assuming that he were to exist, he wouldn't have been a god according to the Quran. He would have been a jinn.
Hang on, let me show you.
But that's not the answer to the question. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking, you made a statement and you're saying that people worship jinns, and and even in the title it was like, Allah in the Quran, and then you changed it to jinn in the Quran. So where in the Quran does Allah mention humans worshiping jinn?
It was in that verse. I think Moose, and I've posted it. It said most of mankind worship the jinn.
I read it. I didn't see that it said that they worship the jinn. Maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, here you go. So in chapter 34, verse 41. Now, this is after angels are asked on Judgment Day if they will worship. So there is angel worship. So they will say, "Glory be to you, our protector." No, they worship the jinn. It was in them most of them believed. And then in chapter 6, verse 100, the jinn, though he asked, and they falsely attribute to him sons and daughters without knowledge. So jinn were sort of attributed to Allah as sons and daughters as well. So,
but I thought we were talking about them being worshipped as gods. That was like the claim, though.
So
they become gods when you worship them.
Well, I
'Cause
mean that, but a big thing, like that's the reason I led into with the humans becoming intercessors, right? Like I led in with that to show that they were like, because the Quran says, they ask the people, does Allah provide for you? And they say yes, it's Allah also. Like they believed in the one God, but then they had multiple deities that would also worship that God.
Mhm.
So that's the reason or intercessors. So that's the reason I was confused about the concept that you were bringing forth, that they were worshiping jinn as God in Arabia, but really they worshiped Allah, even according to the Quran, but then
Right.
they
They
had
worshipped
multiple deities.
correct. They worshipped Allah and multiple deities, which may have been conflated with jinn as well.
Okay,
All
so
right, maybe I
just to
just
clarify,
misunderstood the presentation there. All
Mhm.
right, my bad.
yeah, no
No
worries. I
problem.
think Faz's claim, I think in comparison, is like the gods are like jinns, whereas in my presentation we were just saying that they were worshipped as well, just in addition to the gods as well. So angels, they were seen as angels and jinn, but they were also worshipped as well. So along with the other gods, that is, at least from my perspective.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's how we can wrap it up. Any other questions, concerns? Anybody else from the audience? Actually,
More
If I
questions.
may, I'd say it's kind of weird that so jinn can't be seen,
Uh-huh.
right? Unless they like take human form. Angels, they're not really seen unless allowed by God to be
Mhm.
seen. So it's strange on how they became worshipped.
Right.
Like,
Like I suspect that they may have had more of an impact in like very early civilizations, but over time they were kind of pushed to the periphery.
but I mean, like if they can't be seen,
Mhm.
and then let's say that they can't be seen other than in human form,
Mhm.
then really the jinn, you couldn't say that humans worship jinn because they would be in human form, and then the humans took those human forms and started worshiping them. So I don't know. It seems weird. If they can't be seen, how can they be attributed to worship? Like let's say the jinn moved something to in somebody's eyes. Now they can't see the jinn; they see the object move.
Right.
How can they technically worship the jinn if they don't even know what it is?
I mean, the case with extraordinary personalities, whether it's jinn or whether it's man, even Prophet Muhammad, like people worship him, like those cartoon fanatics, right? The ones that go killing people over cartoons. They're literally worshiping the prophet, but they haven't seen him.
No, but that would be different though. That's a human entity that
Mhm.
we can put to relation, that we can see, we would have been able to touch, we historically know about. My point here is, like, I
Mhm.
don't know, maybe I'm not saying it right. How
Mhm.
can they equate the jinn if they can't see them or don't know really that they exist, right? Because
Right.
until God tells them that jinn exists, there's no way for human to know that jinn exists.
Mhm. I mean, if you looked at that narration, it did state that on Earth they used to roam around in the past and cause mischief and corruption and shed blood.
But that was
So
before Adam was sitting down.
it could have. I would imagine it would. They predated Adam, and to some extent they coexisted because there's some references to human and jinn leading parallel lives and even interbreeding. So the issue is that they used to be more dominant in a civilizational landscape, and then over time they were just most of them became extinct or were pushed to the mountainside or sent to the sea, which is sometimes referred to as the domain of Iblis. So they became more and more. I guess they became less impactful over time.
But what I'm saying is, you can't see them. There's no, until Allah tells people that jinn exist, then they don't know that they're worshiping jinn.
Correct. Yeah, they wouldn't necessarily know.
So if they don't know that they're worshiping jinn, you can't affirm it. You can't, and you can't, and it's not really. It is in Allah's words. They just showed in a way to
Mhm.
not what I started out talking, but I'm saying like they wouldn't know that they're worshiping jinn. So Allah comes and is like, "Oh yeah, you're worshiping jinn," but they wouldn't
Correct.
even
They,
know
they
that.
wouldn't. They wouldn't actually know what their true identities are according to the Quran. It's just saying that don't worry about these deities, these other beings. They're not, they're not worthy of being worshipped. And their identity is kind of, hazy at times. The angels, the jinns, the deities, the Anunnakis, and whatnot.
I'm gonna intercede or I'm not intercede. Interject. I was talking about intercession. So, Blue, you have a question? Hi, Blue.
Hey, hi. Good
Yeah,
evening.
how's it going?
Good evening.
I actually did not have a question. I just got linked this and suddenly I got on the stream instead of in the stream.
Oh,
If you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to.
All right. I'm glad to have you.
If you were, if you happen to have anything to add, and because again, this was for like questions and answers, but we're a free speech platform, so if you have anything to say or anything to contribute or any questions, that is.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
I'm
after the
down.
show ends as well, on the Discord, I think you're still on the like the VC anyways. So you're in the right you're in the right place there. This is just on air if you have any questions to ask any of the panelists.
Yeah. I should probably leave then.
All right, up to you.
All right, cheers, boys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. So yeah,
we also have this question from Reanimator
yeah.
as well. So
Mhm.
if you guys want to give your takes on this.
Sure. Muslims believe that Kurdish are descendants of jinn who bred with. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, maybe they have some jinn blood in them. I don't know.
No.
Why not?
No.
What
that's
are
not
what are
good.
jinns? They're basically prehistoric humans, right? And scientifically,
No,
speaking,
we've not established that. No, we haven't even established that they're actually jinns or they're actually.
I thought they were made out of smokeless fire.
Exactly, they're made out of smokeless fire, to be specific.
I mean,
So,
that's kind of the literalistic way of looking at it. The progenitors of the jinn species were made out of smokeless fire as well as scorching wind. The progenitors of humans were made out of earth.
How come their descendants change material then?
They changed material, but they maintained the temperament. So, like those previous archaic hominids, they're more aggressive in nature than
That's nature, aggression in nature. We're talking about actual physical attributes.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, humans as being made of clay, someone could argue metaphorically that because we're a neutral vessel like clay, we could absorb demonic and angelic components. We could.
Now that's a belief. That's your belief. We don't agree with it. That's your belief. But how was a human made of clay exactly? Where we can actually even go there. How were humans?
Well, we can't go there because human history, recorded human history, only goes 10,000 years, and if Adam were to live, it would have been 200,000 years.
Do we have any evidence?
Wait, how long ago would it have been?
Like 200,000 years ago.
Where'd you get that number? I'm not trying to get sidetracked, but like even the hadiths, even Tabari.
Yeah, Tabari I have issues with. I feel like he kind of lifted a lot of the Christian creationism and injected it into Islam.
But they're all Islamic names that he uses.
Right. The thing is...
So then that would mean that Muslims lifted it.
Muslims... Yeah, but the thing is, we're not obligated to believe everything Tabari says. I mean, he's a historian that came like 3 or 4 centuries after Muhammad.
Wait, how long?
Didn't he come in the year 900, Tabari?
830s?
No, he's in the 900s. He's in the 900s, Tabari.
Yeah, so a lot of history, Islamic history, elapsed between that time. So we can't be like, oh yeah, Tabari is the definitive. I mean, he's also a polymath. He has his hands tied. He's dabbled with multiple fields. He can't be an expert on
So
everything.
then, the main point is like, where did you get that 2,000 from?
Like the
I'm saying,
200,000.
like, if you were to reconcile science, right, or what we know, right, the first humans, the first anatomically modern humans, were between 200,000 to 400,000 years. Now this changes every year. They get a different time. So it's not going to stay static. Maybe like a decade later, they'll say 300,000.
So how is it for you to believe that the Kurdish race is descended from jinns or are a mix of humans?
I don't have any beliefs about them. I'm just saying
But
maybe.
you said it's maybe a possibility. How do you entertain that possibility?
Well, you're going to have to go into genealogy. You have to look up if their DNA is there's more outliers between when compared to other groups in the area.
What would a jinn DNA outlier look like?
It would look like, for example, like Denisovans, right? We have some of their DNA. Some people do, at least. And Neanderthals, we have some of their DNA, and it also varies depending on.
But hang on,
race.
We haven't even established Neanderthals and Denisovans are jinns specifically. How can you make that claim that they're jinns?
I'm saying if you were to explore like the genealogy and the genetics behind these Kurdish tribes, and something unusual happens, it would add support to their claims, not my claims, to their claims.
What
One more thing.
These are kind of crazy terminologies like DNA outliner, and then what's the one you just used just now? Like I can't remember, but you just used another term that's very non-specific, and I think that's where the danger comes of making these claims of like, especially about a whole group of people, is like it's very non-specific. You say there's a DNA outliner, then that could prove that they're from
not
the jinn.
outliner, outlier.
Outlier, okay.
Yeah. So like let's say hypothetically, the Kurdish people, they come up with this claim that they're racially homogenous, or that they could trace back their ancestry to certain nomadic tribes, whether human or jinn or whatever, right? You could actually test that. You bring their DNA and you map it, and you see if it's different from the.
Wouldn't you need jinn DNA?
Exactly. What have we even established that jinns have a DNA? Have we even been able to study jinn? So can we even make
like my whole idea is that all these categorization systems are very sloppy. Angel, jinn, aliens, hominids.
I wouldn't say that aliens is very sloppy, because it's like extraterrestrial, right? That means that it's like terrestrial, but it's not of this earth. So that one's like not very sloppy
angels,
at all.
Right? An angel is an extraterrestrial because it's not from the earth.
Actually, it wouldn't be, because it's outside of the universe. It's outside of space, time, matter, really everything, right? So that's not really the same thing.
Yeah, it is. An extraterrestrial is anything that's outside of this earth.
But then there are angels that are sitting on your shoulders too, according to Islamic belief. They're angels,
right? But their origin is not from Earth, right?
No. There's angels that are actually roaming the earth. There are actually angels that are won't enter your house because you have a dog and pictures in your house. So how does that make them extraterrestrial?
There's angels that come and visit the Kaaba for some reason.
Oh, okay. I have a better question for you. If aliens were to visit us right now, they would no longer be extraterrestrial?
Hang on.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. If aliens actually visited us now, would they no longer be extraterrestrial? Have they relinquished their
we haven't even gotten there. the question is, how are angels extraterrestrials?
Because they're not. Their origin is not Earth.
So
It's outside of the terrestrial, so technically under the definition they would be.
extraterrestrial. So your claim is that angels are aliens.
I mean,
But
it's not a wrong claim.
but here's the thing though. Would they even be in the same category as aliens? Because
is
they
aliens?
become
You have to establish what aliens
Well, Moose, I'll help you here. Like, you might have the common misconception that aliens are from like Prometheus or Predator. Like, an alien is anything, even if it's bacteria, if it's not from the Earth. Like, if they grew a plant on the International Space Station,
That
that's
would be
still
more-
that's still alien.
Okay.
It's an
Okay,
extraterrestrial.
so from
It's
that
off
definition-
Earth. Yeah,
Right,
that's the
right.
actual definition, not like the.
Okay.
It's not like from the Hitchcock Roshan movie, like Krish and stuff.
yeah. That the
Yeah.
E.T. and Hrithik Roshan movie.
Yeah.
Very-
Yeah, and I think next question, I think Thinking Clearly had one as well in the chat, so I'll put it up here.
What happened to the other gods mentioned in the Quran? Are they still around, or did Allah kill them? So, who wants to go first?
You could go.
All right. So, the thing is, these gods, like Ar-Rahman, for example, was taken as a title and attributed to Allah Himself. So, who is breathing? Am I hearing?
What the fuck kind of mic am I using again? One second, let me switch that.
I hear you laughing.
Yeah. Come on, man. Use the proper microphone, please. This thing uses the wrong thing every single time I turn it on.
Yeah. So
my-
the funny thing, I know back to gods, where we're going to the gods. So Baal himself his worship was abandoned because of the Islamic invasions, right? So the Islamic invasions, so they kind of took certain, they kind of preached against Baal, and then there's also the Ar-Rahman was given as a title to God, and so was Malik. And Malik also became an angel that was the guardian of hell. So Malik is, especially I mentioned here in chapter, Malik? It's chapter 43, verse 77. So I mentioned here that Malik is the guardian. He becomes the guardian of, or the keeper of hell, that is. So Malik was also became a title as well. It became a name as well. So these things kind of evolved into something different. And Ar-Rahman, as before, it was the title of the god Marduk, but then eventually it became, Rahman became an attribute of Allah Himself, because they kind of used these existing attributes and applied them to Allah Himself. So, and then the temples of Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were destroyed. The interesting thing about Wad, Suwa, Yagut, and Yop, and Nasr is that their gods were sort of like, they were abandoned again in favor of, the worship of Allah, so to speak. So a lot of these gods were abandoned, that is. So abandoned for the reasons of forced conversions, especially Baal as well, even though Baal was there for a long time, or they were attributed to idol worship, that is. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Thinking Clearly. So she say, so Allah kept the other God's son, but demoted them like in a merger. So it kind of was a merger, so to speak, like it merged into that one, because monotheism was kind of like that, the default that Islam was going for, because they didn't want any other gods. They kind of merged them together. Faiz, did you have any words or anything to say to that?
Yeah, it's just that a lot of these names and attributes and classification systems, they kind of changed with the culture, with the time, with the mission agenda as well, right? So some gods were integrated, some got demoted, but the Quran's claiming that none of them were actually gods in the sense that we perceive them. They're just some entities that were non-human.
Yeah, and I do have another question. You mentioned the what do you call it? The Quran not denying the existence of these deities.
Mhm.
What verse were you using to make that claim that the Quran itself is not denying the existence of other gods?
Yeah, it's one of the things I've noticed, like when I was reading Quran over the years. No specific verse, but when it does mention these gods, it doesn't say anything like, "Oh yeah, they're fake," they're not real. It doesn't actually say it that bluntly. It's more like, what is the point worshiping, those names, and when they can't speak on your behalf, they're not going to do anything for you. So that's basically it. So it leaves that possibility open that they might have not been gods, but might have been something else in other civilizations and cultures.
Doesn't
why-
no God but God mean that there is no other God?
Yeah, because ultimately, right, Allah is God, right? There is no God but God, or no God worthy of worship other than God.
No,
God
hang on.
being the
Hang on, Fez, hang on.
primordial reality.
La ilaha illallah means no God but Allah. So
Right.
it is explicitly saying in the Shahada that
Yeah.
it's denying the existence of all other gods but Allah.
Right. So God or the ultimate reality, right? Or Allah. He's the final God. He's the only God. He's the only entity worthy of worship. All of these so-called names, so-called deities, aliens, angels, jinns, prehistoric brutes, orcs, whatever you want to call them, right? They're not worthy of worship. I mean, they had superhuman strength. The shayateen, sometimes they strike deals with you, supposedly, but ultimately they have no power. They're not gods. They're people. They're beings that we've called gods, but they're not gods.
The Jinantan, last question. How can Allah be called the inheritor, one of his 99 names? You can only inherit something you don't own, and everything already belongs to Allah. This is a very interesting question, actually. So, at least from my perspective, I think it was, basically like I mentioned Baal as well, right? Like he inherited the kingdom of the gods, that is. So I think
wait, Baal as in Baljeet from Phineas and Ferb, or the god?
no, not Baljeet. Come on now. So first Ehud Rahman, now Baljeet. All right. So basically, it's like they were kind of, the Arabs of that region were kind of like attributing everything from the existing gods to the Islamic gods. They were kind of like they added that, the inheritor, into like the definition, one of the 99 names, because they were trying their best to what do you call it, distance themselves from polytheism, that is. And this might have actually been a mistake. This actually might have been a mistake that they committed. But Faiz, do you have any take on this question?
I think clearly brought up. I've actually never thought of it. So I don't have any input. This is
yeah.
I have to actually sit down and think about that one.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. But yeah, thinking clearly. The reason, what do you call it? They kind of wanted to say God is the only one who can inherit from himself. So it's kind of like that weird, there was this distancing from polytheism, especially from what do you call it? Like the regional polytheism that I was talking about. That is like these gods, like they were taking these names and just like, no, Allah is the only one who's the inheritor, not this particular god. Like, for example, Baal is the inheritor. No, Allah is the inheritor. So it was kind of like this weird attempt to convert a population. A subtle method, but it is a plot hole, definitely, for sure. It's a very big, major plot hole
that presents itself to one of the 99 names of Allah. So thank you. Very good question, thinking clearly.
I would say it's just an attempt to morph. You know, there was what 360 gods in Arabia at the
Yes.
time,
Yes.
and they all had attributes. I'm pretty sure that there would have been a god of inheritance.
Exactly.
And so the easiest way is to get people to follow, because I've mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I think that the Quran and Islam was more of a cultural collective to put people together to battle the incursion of other cultures like Christianity with their own writing system, Hebrew, like the Judaism being in Medina with their own writing system. So they're trying to put all this together and put people to form an actual Arabian peninsula, which Muhammad actually says. You know, he's like, if it was up to me, I would cast out all the Jews and Christians from Arabia and make it purely Islamic. This sounds like the rhetoric of somebody who's trying to form an actual state. And so one of the easiest ways to do that would be taking a multitude of gods, right? Like, and then whichever ones have the closest, and some of the gods are going to be repetitious, obviously, because there's going to be one tribe is going to have an inheritor god that they call by a certain name. And because Islam's really big about, the 7 dialects, they wouldn't need to consistently come up with a new one, right? They could just morph all of them into it. So it would make sense to me that these attributes of God were probably deities that were being worshipped, and then they just changed the deity that was being worshipped, or the intercessor, to the attribute of Allah. And that would also kind of explain why in the Quran he says, who will be their intercessor on the day of judgment?
Yeah.
And then this is a way to degrade the intercessor worship, but also attribute it to Allah as a morphing system for a society on the rise.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that point you make, that these gods or intercessors were morphed into that one. And we even explored that many of these gods were from regions like Yemen. There were regions from Western Arabia, the Kinda kingdom, even the northern kingdoms from Nabatea. These gods were morphed into the Islamic pantheon, as well as and there were attempts to unify the Arabian kingdom even before Islam with the kingdom of Kinda between 450 to 550 CE. So this was sort of like the more refined attempt to unite, because the kingdom of Kinda had still a collection of tribes that worshipped other gods.
I guess a good historical analogy would be Upper and Lower Egypt, how they had the same gods with the same types of powers and mythology, but when they morphed the kingdoms together, they put the two names together. It became Akhman Ra instead of Akhman and Ra. And this was a unifying way to show, hey, we accept in certain conditions your belief, but we have to unify people. And the best way to do that is to take a previous belief system and adapt it to what we need culturally.
Exactly. This is very, very, this is a way to look at it. And yes, thinking clearly, thanks for addressing the question, but it is still in the wrong word to use. He can't inherit by definition. So I count that as a mistake. Absolutely. By definition, so to speak, he cannot inherit anything because he already owns everything. So by definition, it's definitely a mistake by the author of the Quran or the Islamic preaching, that is. And at the same time, one can make it's a straw man. I believe this is a straw man argument. They can say, everybody returns to Allah, so he's inheriting souls, or it's a huge straw man, I would say, but it's a bit of a stretch, so to speak. But that's the only reasoning I can come up with from an Islamic perspective. But other than that, yeah, it's a big gaping hole, so to speak. But any other questions, guys? Any other comments, questions? You can come on the stream as well. We can share the link. So you
Yeah,
can come
we
on the,
shared. I put it in the comments. I'll put it in one more time,
yeah,
and we'll wait a few more minutes.
yeah.
And if anything, we'll just if there are some people who are afraid to ask any questions on live stream, we can always do it on Discord. As people are coming onto the screen as well, I want to take the time to just mention that next week, we're going to be doing a Q&A on Offer's Five Kings book as well. This is something I just wanted to do, and Moose and I wanted to do. I read the book personally. It does offer a very unique perspective that I haven't seen in other books themselves. And I think just if people in this chat, if you do appreciate Faiz coming on and discussing with us, I would highly recommend just buying the book, reading it, and if you do have any questions about it, coming on next week to ask us. I'll put that in the chat here and also the description of this video to anyone who's reading it or watching after the live stream.
Yeah, no, this is definitely highly recommended, and we'll do a Q&A next week, and we'll author. Sorry, author, we're gonna grill you a little more this time.
More grilling.
More grilling.
Yeah, and again, this isn't. I don't want this to be something where we're attacking the book itself, but we're going to be attacking or I wouldn't say attacking, but almost asking questions about some of the things that you wrote in a sense.
Yeah, like some of the maybe claims you've made. So
and I have made claims that you won't actually find almost anyone making. Like some of my claims are borrowed, obviously, and I properly reference it, but I have made some unique claims as well.
Yeah, and again, this wouldn't follow. This is a bit unique as well. So let's make the Q&A about the book, not attacking the book or the person, but basically questioning and kind of being
Socratic assault. Yes, we are permitting Socratic assault. We are permitting this, and and then of course, I'm not as smart at anything. I'm just making smart comments on the chat. You're welcome. You're still welcome to come on.
Yeah, I like his comments.
Yeah, we are still welcome to come on in person. But yeah, any other questions, concerns from the audience? You can type it in if you're not comfortable on in the chat, or you can come on in the stream that we just posted. So we'll wait a few minutes. But yeah, Nick, do you have any questions, Nick, about Moose, about Faiz and myself, and even Wiseau, that is? Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, the only thing I can bring into this is it's been a question that I've had for quite a while, that there are so many similarities between other cultures and their gods. Like, let's say the pantheon of India, Indian gods. You got Indra with his Vajrayudham, which is the lightning bolt. So king of the angels has a thunderbolt, and then you also have the king of the Acropolis or Parthenon in Greece, Zeus, who has his thunderbolt. Thor, who has his lightning and such. So they had so many similarities. Why go from a commonly shared base religion to something monotheistic is always something that I wondered, as to it being such a huge change from the generally accepted culture.
Good question. Yeah, Faiz, you can go with that.
No, I mean, I've mostly focused on similarities as being something that unifies religions, cultures, and so forth, rather than something that kind of undermines it or discredits it. That's the position that I usually begin with.
And keep in mind, Nick, bring up the thunderbolt? Interesting question. Yahweh was the god of the The original God, Yahweh, was the god of thunder. So and he was also a warrior god as well too.
Oh, he's Zeus?
No, Yahweh.
Mm,
I'm talking about Yahweh.
yeah.
So Yahweh, part of that pantheon. So and then once he was the lone god worshipped by the Israelite tribe. At least correct me if I'm wrong. He was the lone god worshipped by the Israelites, and then you had the political division between Israel and Judah. And then once they merged El into Yahweh as well as Baal, and then it was merged into together when they became one kingdom. And then from the Jewish religion, you had the Christian religion pop up, and the Christian religion was adapted into Rome about, like, let's say in the 300s and 400s. It was adopted into Rome. That's why it became more widespread, because it became the state religion. And there was already another monotheistic belief, Zoroastrianism, sort of monotheistic, that is, which existed in the Persian Empire. So these were two big, gigantic empires. Because in the olden days, what used to happen was when you were conquered by the conqueror, the conqueror's god, or the god of the mightier one, used to prevail. So people had to accept the god of the new order, that is. So this was how it used to happen. The only ones that, so this is how it kind of spread. There were conversions, like people were either forced converted, and they kind of kept it with monotheism, especially. It felt like, in a sense, Islam followed the example of the Romans as well, and then they created another empire, so another empire that spanned 3 different continents. So the more widespread it became, the more there was this shift towards monotheism, because I feel like it was, I guess it was lesser gods, because different tribes and different groups would worship different gods. So lesser gods meant more control. That is, one god is practically easier to control. That is, and one god would unite as a symbol of unity. Was seen as a symbol of unity. That is. So I know it's a weird contradiction, but yeah, that's how they kind of spread. So they didn't keep those the existing beliefs, but they rather focus on that one dominant monotheistic belief. Now we have Christianity and Islam being the 2 most dominant religions. Reason being, they were the religion of the colonizers, the conquerors, as well as, and they had the most widespread conquest as well. And the methods used were also very barbaric. We even discussed the jizya system, as well as the first conversion system, die or convert. That is, we even had the incidents like the Spanish Inquisition, and we had northern tribes in Europe forced converted into Christianity as well by invading kingdoms. So we've it was a very it was sort of like brought in by force. Let's just say that, and because said God was just control.
Yeah. Oh, and also I hope that in relation to the topic today, we brought up Baal a few times. So I hope you like my profile picture.
I
related to
love
that.
this profile picture. Keep this for the next show. Keep this for the next show. Please.
All right.
Please keep this for the next show.
So, King, you said something about like culture and religion to bring people together. Could you say it again so that I don't lead this argument in the wrong way?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these so-called similarities that span different cultures, different religions, including indigenous folklore and whatnot, that this interconnectedness points to some commonality. Now, it might not be exactly how we imagined it, but I do believe there were some historical events that allowed for such a universal appeal for concepts like angels that appear in almost every religion. So when someone who's a skeptic, they look at it kind of the other way. They look at all these commonalities as perhaps plagiarism or borrowing or like absorbing these elements for political or social purposes. I don't look at it like that. I begin from the point of view that these commonalities point to something greater, something more transcendent.
Okay, with that being said, in nick of time, I don't know if you would, but could you show that the screen share that I sent you on Discord about Tabri and like the chariot
Oh yeah, the
for the
chariots,
sun?
right? Yeah.
So,
I mean,
but
I've read it,
so that
and there is similarities to the Egyptian, and I think what you're getting at is basically like,
in Greeks.
yeah, in Greeks, if it was something that actually happened or got absorbed in their culture.
Well,
Well,
it'd
me
be absorbed into their religion
into the
because
religion, yeah. I
because there would be
personally,
people that believed it.
yeah, I feel like to some extent, Tabari, he doesn't have much of a filter. He just records. So something like that he might have heard from someone else, and he's not going to verify the accuracy of the content. He's just going to record the information.
But the issue here is that there were people who believed it. So
yeah, there were.
what
And
you were,
also,
but this would be a concept of the plagiarism to battle what you're saying is like it's a morph of it. It's really like a part of it, as opposed
yeah, it
to
could be a plagiarism written by certain writers, yes. But I don't know, like, if it affects the scope of Islam or the Quran, because the Quran doesn't have all of this fanciful embellishments. Like I think in some hadiths you can find like something about a flying whale carrying the earth on its back, or can't quite remember at the moment. But you don't see these fanciful details in the Quran.
But
So,
those are the explanations, right? The
yeah,
exegesis. Those are the
yeah.
so
see
that
Quran.
when you
Tafsir
just
is
refer
actually-
to them as fantastical tales, what they really more are people explaining what their belief system was of what the verses at the time that were being revealed.
Right.
And so
right.
what I think is like what I think is unique about this is that with the chariot, right? It's like it shows that they were trying to say that because the Quran makes a claim that Allah had sent messengers to various people's communities throughout the world with the same message. So it's trying to take in these ancient myths and show, oh yeah, this was the message. This was probably what was actually told to them, but when we didn't receive that message at this time. So it's totally okay to believe it, because in the concept of the Quran, with Allah saying what I just said, he said that means that every myth on earth is related towards Allah. Because if every message has been distorted, that means that all the message came from him, which means that at some basis, every mythology.
Yeah, you're absolutely
and then
correct.
you pick and choose
yeah.
that.
There's
pick
some
and choose.
Why so? One sec. Let's let Faiz King respond to that, and then at this point we're also at the 155 mark, so we'll let Offer Faiz King respond, and we'll move it to Discord.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Like a lot of these myths, they do have overlap. There's recurrent themes, there's recurrent ideas, concepts like the snake and the dragon people, like we've discussed before, they exist in different cultures. They're nice. They're great to look into in terms of research, but the interesting thing that I've noticed that when you look at the Quran, it's actually a bit clean. It doesn't have like all of those embellishments, like the whale carrying the earth, or like the chariot carrying the
But
moon and
then
the sun.
you have the sun worshiping the god. That is, the sun is prostrating to God.
I mean, everything's prostrating to God. That's the whole concept. Like in Islam,
That's in the
all of the
Quran.
celestial bodies are considered submitters because they're following their natural course. This also holds true for anything in nature. So, like the birds in the sky, when they're flying or whatnot, they're following God's decree.
But are they prostrating? Are they performing sujood?
Suju, that's a very literal way of looking at it. For a bird, flying around and doing what a bird does is its suju. Since
That's
we
a
have,
that's a radical claim to make.
well, that's how a lot of Muslims view it, though. Like every animal is doing suju just by simply being and doing what it's supposed to do.
Why is it different with
So
humans?
the Quran actually has the celestial bodies as submitters, and the Islam for the celestial bodies is the orbits that they take or the course that they take. So
But
it's
then
not.
Yeah. So, Moose, I know it's coming up to time, so we'll continue this in the Discord.
yeah,
But just on air, how about this? We'll go around and everyone say their last bit for the on air, and then the rest of the discussion will continue on Discord, just for the sake of time.
all right. So
Moose, go first. You can get your summary, last notes.
okay, yeah. No, we discussed the gods of the Quran. That is. So when we were discussing the gods of the Quran, we kind of looked at how these gods were belong to specific regions. That is, we linked them, so it kind of goes to show that the author of the Quran is practically, getting inspired. Like he makes the claim that these gods existed in Noah's time, but in reality, many of these gods were already, were not that far off. They were in relatively distant memory. So that's why Allat, Al Uzza, Manat, Yaq, Nasr, Suwa, all these gods we looked into their history, and there were different peoples that lived in that time that worshipped said gods. So this was sort of like an attempt to unite the Arabian kingdom, but there were also inspirations like Ar-Rahman was an inspiration, Malik was an inspiration, and we also looked into the creature Malik, who was the keeper of hell. So this was one interesting fact that I also found. Then angels and jinns were worshipped as well, or seen as intercessors, so to speak. So we saw some different gods, polytheistic gods that were mentioned in the Quran, and so it was very very interesting to look into. But we'll discuss this further in Discord. Author Faiz, you go.
Yeah, I mean, like most of what you're saying, it does make sense. The people did worship the angels. They did worship the jinn. I do argue that because the Quran states that most of mankind have worshipped jinn, so I look at all of these gods and all of these pantheons, and I suspect that I mean, they could be humans as well. They could be fabricated. So we can't all fully into the ideology because these things have. But it's always great to have an open mind and kind of look at the different sources and the different interpretations and look at the whole chain of narrations.
All right. So, why so as well? If you want to get any last words on air.
Well, with today's topic, I think it's unique to think of the Islamic concept that humans were created for worship. They're also created for the hellfire. And so then obviously jinn were created to be worshipped then. Like if Allah's word is eternal and he's like, yeah, humans have worshipped jinns, then he made them to be worshipped. It's a weird concept Islamically that Allah wants to be worshipped, but he also creates things that he wants to be worshipped instead of himself. But there we go.
All right. So, and thank you guys, everyone, for joining the Gin and Tonic show on this case. I know this is a bit different than what we're usually used to, but just trying to keep the time limit and keep it as a professional show and such. If you guys want to discuss more, the Discord is always open. I'll put up the
Sounds good.
link for that up here. And as mentioned, next week we will be doing the discussion with Offer Fives King about his book. Please do buy the book and read it. I highly recommend it as it does bring a unique perspective. Again, it is a perspective. Whether you agree with it or not is a topic for another day, specifically next week. So yeah, we'll see you guys in the Discord.
Thank you. Appreciate it.